Okay, so today we're going to be talking about basketball in the 21st century, and this is more or less a presentation. This is not a video, but this is going to really make you think as a basketball player, as a basketball coach, and if you're a manager for a team or an organization, this is also going to make you think. So why am I making this video? Well, over the past, I would say, couple of years, I have been really looking into what the future is going to be looking like, and it's something that I am really interested in. At heart, even though I am a really big basketball and football type of person, I am a massive nerd, and when it comes down to it, there's a few things that are really interesting to me. So, of course, basketball is extremely important to me. It's something that has made me a livelihood, and of course today that's what the topic is going to be: the future of basketball in the 21st century. And when it comes down to it, we're going to really talk about 5 different topics. Number 1 is the NBA, what the NBA is going to look like over the next 80 years, or 100 years technically. And then we're also going to look at FIBA, and of course that would be international basketball. And then we're going to look at players, how you can become the greatest of all time in the future, a couple of different ways how you can do it, but also we're going to be looking at 2 very far off things, and I'm saying far off because it is artificial intelligence and as well as genetics, CRISPR, bioengineering, things like that. So if you don't know what any of those last 2 items are, don't worry, we will be getting into it. It's actually really interesting and could be quite scary. So let's dive deep into basketball and the NBA. So as we know, the NBA, their main goal is to essentially create a worldwide league. And we've seen this because, of course, we know the NBA is North America. They want to expand into Mexico. Mexico City is going to be potentially one of the new expanding teams over the next 5 to 10 years. We also know that there is NBA Africa. Well, the basketball league over in Africa that the NBA started, and this is really getting me to think that potentially into the future we may have a few more leagues, and that is the potential for a South American league. There may also be a potential for a European league, as well as a Middle Eastern and Asian league. This would then create 6 different leagues. Overall, each league would have their own season, and something that I foresee, and a couple of things that I've kind of been reading, is that there will be a true world championship when it comes to professional basketball. How are they going to do this? I am not too sure. Obviously, they have Basketball Africa, they have NBA, they could have the NBA South American League, and of course, Europe has the Euro A League. They may just take over something like that and just turn it into the NBA Euro League or whatever it may be. I'm not too sure how they're going to be doing stuff like that, but overall, there would be 6 leagues, and then there would be one ultimate championship at the end of the whole entire thing, which would be kind of cool, to be honest with you. Now, when it comes to FIBA basketball, international basketball, it's going to become even more competitive when it comes to different nations. Because we've seen the explosion of basketball worldwide, but also because the NBA, if it does go global, like I was mentioning, what will happen is an absolute explosion in worldwide knowledge as well as skill when it comes to basketball. You may actually start seeing that different areas of the world have different strategies and try to build those different strategies into being better than other countries' strategies, which is kind of interesting on its own. However, when we start looking at it, we're already starting to see that. We're seeing that the United States is no longer that powerhouse it once used to be. France just recently beat the United States. Spain is playing them in a few days. Obviously, this video is going live well after that. We'll have to see what happens. But when it comes down to it, the world is going to get better. which is not just good for basketball in general, but what it's also going to be doing is it's going to be spreading out more wealth around the world as well. I know it's not just because of basketball, but as if we can get fewer and fewer third world countries worldwide, we are going to have a massive economic explosion, and that means more and more people are going to be wealthy and more people are going to be happier with their lives. At least I would hope so. But that's just the interesting part of this whole international basketball. We've seen Slovenia, for the first time I think ever, make the Olympics, and now they may be in contention of winning a gold. That is amazing news. I can't wait to see the future of basketball. Next is the future of the greatest players ever. So, as we can see, there was Wilt Chamberlain. He was one of the best basketball players ever. Scored 100 points in a single game. Only player to ever do that at the NBA level. Next was Michael Jordan. He essentially followed up Wilt Chamberlain. Now, of course, this is all going to be controversial for some people because some people may like other players, but Michael Jordan was next. After MJ was Shaq. Notice how on my list of 6 players here, there's no Kobe. Kobe didn't really change the league. Kobe merely copied Michael Jordan and became, obviously, one of the greatest. And that's going to be my first lesson. How can you become great in the future? You can obviously copy a successful NBA player today, and if you can do that to the T, like Kobe Bryant, you can be one of the greatest players of all time as well. However, you didn't change the league. Players like Shaq did. He changed the league. He didn't just change it like the other players changed it, where every other team has to go out and say, hey, I just need somebody to compete against that one player. Obviously, that's what happened. The Rockets got Yao Ming. Other teams tried to get another big player that had to try and compete against Shaq. And nobody really could. And then, of course, he got old, and LeBron James took over, and there was teams like the Toronto Raptors who would try and go out and get a player who could guard LeBron James, which was unsuccessful, and nobody could really guard LeBron James. He changed the league because the whole league changed because they wanted to guard him and to score against him. While Shaq, he changed the league a little bit more because he changed how they held up their basketball nets. Obviously, he broke quite a few backboards, so he changed it in more ways than one. He also has the hack-a-Shaq rule because he was so terrible at shooting the free throw shot that he had to make the NBA change the rules because he was so terrible, but also so amazing. It's kind of odd how that one worked out. But then next was Steph Curry. And Steph Curry changed the league in multiple ways as well. So, of course, every single team, it's not just Curry, it was Klay Thompson as well, but the Dub City, the Warriors, they changed the NBA because of Curry, because they ran to a small lineup with three-point shooters. That was when the whole league and the entire world said, oh, there's actually a benefit to the three-point line. If you can shoot over 35 point something percent, you're actually a higher percentage shooter there when it comes to true shooting percentage. We should just get more people to shoot threes. And that's what happened. However, for a very small, brief moment in time between Curry and Trae Young, between those two players for a very short period of time, they actually thought about putting in a 4-point line. Because, of course, the 3-point line got too easy. So that they never did that, but that was just something that kind of came up. But then, of course, more recently this year specifically is Giannis Antetokounmpo. He's just amazing. Overly strong, can't shoot that well, but overly strong, can get to the rim with ease. But notice something here. The league went from a big man to a not so big man to a big man again, to a not so big man, to an even smaller man, and then to a big man again. Notice this. It's not just about skills. It's also about size. So, what I mean by that is, if the league turns smaller, which it did with Curry, what's going to happen? If you can get an overly athletic big guy, he's going to trump the small guy. When that overly big athletic big guy, like for example Shaq, either gets old and out of shape, which he did, and then you go to a power player, that's LeBron James, that's going to take over the league. LeBron James starts getting a bit older, maybe having some team issues, who knows, but he starts getting a little bit older, and then a younger, smaller player who can shoot, who can get between defenses like Curry, come back in. Curry slightly disappears, mostly due to injury, but then Giannis comes in. So notice how those phases tend to go in the NBA, and you can, as a player, you can follow that as well. Artificial intelligence. Now, you're probably thinking I'm only adding this because there's going to be robots in the NBA. There probably will be robots playing basketball, but not at the NBA level, and probably not over the next 80 years or so. What I'm talking about here is this. The uses of artificial intelligence. The Toronto Raptors, even though this doesn't get that much media attention, the Toronto Raptors actually use a ton of artificial intelligence. So basically what the Raptors use is machine learning. Basically, it's a method for improving their roster decisions, which is probably why they went with Scottie Barnes over Jalen Suggs. They're going for a specific type of player. Somebody who has a plus on their wingspan versus their height. So Scottie Barnes is like a +5 wingspan versus height. And his ability to shoot is not a big drastic issue because they can fix that. And on top of that, his defensive ability, they're going by a whole bunch of different stat lines. I'm just mentioning 3 right there. And when it starts coming down to their decisions, the computer generally makes it for them. As we can see here, roster decisions for the Toronto Raptors are managed by Ujiri and his personal team. The roster creation process begins in the offseason with an amateur draft, which we just recently had, and free agent signings, and continues through the season with trades and related roster moves. Prior to 2016, which is when they implemented this, Ujiri's team curated and analyzed copious amounts of data, often in Excel, to form player target lists. Ujiri described this process as too manual and bogged down with paperwork. And we've seen this as an investor. I invest in RK, which is an ETF that holds a lot of different stuff, but one of the things that it holds is UI, and basically that's a fantastic company, and it's basically the same idea as this with artificial, but it's for businesses. Anyways, getting way too long of a story there. It seeks to eliminate the inefficiencies. The Raptors then partnered with IBM Watson, which is an artificial intelligence machine from IBM, back in 2016 to become the first NBA team to use a supercomputer to analyze players, removing cumbersome tasks and granting the Raptors more decision-making time. In partnership with IBM Interactive Global Business Services, the Raptors built a state-of-the-art war room, a center outfitted with multiple screens showing data captured from enhanced cognitive technology from IBM Watson. So this is actually quite interesting. So that's actually a picture of all the screens right there. You can actually zoom in and you can actually see the New York roster right there. You can see basically their starters there. You can see their potential bench there. I'm not too sure what the different colors are for. However, that gives you an idea as to what's going on, and they can actually scout out other teams at the same time as trying to find the best suited matchups with their team. This is why when you watch the Raptors, they don't always use the same lineups over and over again. They tend to change them from team to team. That's why. So it's actually really interesting. So this is actually an excerpt from IBM's website. And basically it says, for the first time in their 24 years, I'm going to skip the beginning. Basically, I'm going to pick up right here about there, but you can read the rest if you would like. You can pause the video. But in 2015, the Raptors were in the midst of building a new practice facility in Toronto and needed to upgrade the existing war room, where they were putting together the building blocks for today's team. At the time, magnets on the wall and isolated data sets could only get them so far, with dozens of spreadsheets and hundreds of scouting reports to sift through. The Raptors worked with IBM to create a new data-driven command center, which the organization debuted for the 2016 NBA draft, where the organization picked current star Pascal Siakam in the first round. The command center aggregates the Raptors' expansive data and helps them with insights for decision making. It provides a consolidated, comprehensive view of all the players' information. Also, from other stories I've read, this same data set can be used to create different strategies around the team that they have, as well as the teams they're playing against. So now this comes down to the whole strategy idea. And what we're talking about here is, of course, plays, but not just plays, it's the strategy. So, for example, if you're going up against a team that, let's say, has a very low 3-point percentage when covered, however, has an even lower 3-point percentage if you're allowing them to shoot open shots, what would you then run? Would you run a man-to-man to cover them tight? Or would you run a zone, maybe a 2-3 style zone or a 3-2 or a 2-1-2 that sits you back, allows them to shoot open threes because then they have a lower 3-point percentage when they're shooting wide open? Or how about this? Back in the playoffs, when the Toronto Raptors played against the Golden State Warriors and they won the championship, do you think that box and one was really an idea from Nick Nurse, or could it have possibly been a data set that they got from IBM Watson saying, hey, let the rest of the team shoot threes, double team Curry, do not allow Curry to shoot threes, make him attack the rim, because what's going to happen there is you have size over them. And at that point, he's going to either get blocked or he's going to kick it out for a 3 for a player like maybe Draymond Green, who can't shoot all that well. That really gets me thinking. I never read any stories about that, but that's a potential that could have happened. Nick Nurse is a superior, smart coach. However, could he be augmenting his ability to coach and really using artificial intelligence to boost up his knowledge to become an even better coach? We all think that Ujiri, the manager for the Toronto Raptors, is so smart on the picks that he makes, whether it's Malachi Flynn, Pascal Siakam, OG Anunoby, all these players, really good players, but he's getting all this credit. It's actually IBM Watson, and it's still Ujiri. He's the one making the final decision, but it was also his original decision to bring in Watson. This is why the Raptors really are set up really well for the future. Next is genetics. Genetics are going to be extremely important coming into the future because they can be absolutely scary at the same time. So we were all worried about steroids. And of course, players get an unfair advantage when they use steroids because they get the steroids, they work out, and then their muscles can recover faster so that they can work out more. That's essentially the layman's term on how steroids work. With CRISPR, which is a brand new technology that's only been around for a few years, and it's still in the testing phase, really, but this is how it works. Basically, what is CRISPR? CRISPR is a technology, in theory, on the medical side of things, will allow people with abilities to get cancer to not have cancer, or maybe sickle cell disease to not get sickle cell disease, or people who may go blind in the future to not go blind, like my father. So there is real-world use for CRISPR. You can actually make us live forever as a species as well, but that's probably 200 or 300 years from now. However, what is CRISPR? How does it work? Well, it basically, you're able to use the Cas9, which is a protein that is able to then cut out pieces of your DNA, It's a really smart, I think it's called a protein. I'm not 100% on this stuff, but I know a good amount about it to explain it. It's able to cut out parts of your DNA and then replace it with better parts of DNA. So for example, if you have DNA strands that say, hey, you may develop cancer 10 years from now or 20, 30, 40 years from now, well, guess what? Or you're at a higher risk of getting maybe colon cancer or whatever it may be. They can just go in, snip out that piece of the DNA that says you're going to get that cancer. They can replace it with a non-cancerous version of DNA, and then you're just not going to get cancer someday. So that's the benefit to it. However, you can also use this same technology to say, hey, I want to have massive muscles. I want to grow, instead of being 6'2", I want to be 7'4". I want to be athletic, things like that. And this is how it works. So in this demonstration, Susan has sickle cell disease. Well, in the lab, scientists create a strand of guide DNA or guide RNA that matches the mutated DNA sequence. From there, what happens when we move down the line is that Cas9 protein then goes with an injection, a vaccine or whatever, and then it's injected into your body. And because it's RNA, it's essentially an mRNA vaccine with the Cas9 mix. And then it's able to go into your body. It's able to snip out that mutated piece of DNA that caused sickle cell disease, in this case anyways, and then it's able to cut that piece out and then insert the healthy piece of DNA. Or if you're looking to get bigger muscles or maybe grow taller, that piece of DNA that tells your body how tall you're supposed to be. And then if all goes well, in this case Susan no longer has sickle cell disease. However, if you are looking to get it with get bigger muscles, be able to jump higher, longer Achilles so that you can jump higher, things like that, you can literally change your body whichever way you want. And that's the scary part, because maybe not everybody wants to have a designer body. Maybe you just want to be yourself, and now you can no longer compete with those superhumans. Which then leads me back to my initial point of different NBA leagues around the world. There may also be a superhuman league as well. And then the sad part about that is what we currently see between the NBA and the WNBA, where there's not as much money going towards the WNBA because there's less people watching it. Well, what would you rather watch? Normal humans compete, or these superhumans who can jump 75 inches into the air, who can get the rim to their chest, who can look like they're playing like slam ball off of trampolines? Or would you rather watch normal humans? And that's going to be the question. And of course, there's going to be people who say, probably a lot of people who say, I just want to watch the superhumans. They're crazy. I want to see just ridiculousness. And if that's the case, then those are the athletes who may get the millions and the regular NBA players may not. And then when it comes to, it's going to be the same idea as the NBA and WNBA. Who watches the NBA? You want to see the crazy athletes perform. And that's why people watch the NBA and less people watch the WNBA. I like watching the WNBA because I like watching the plays that they're running, and I'm more into the strategy. But not everyone's like that. So the benefits of that is, of course, you could use the coordination DNA strand, if there is one, combine it with the athleticism of Giannis, with the drive to will to win like MJ, and if you combine a Curry with a Giannis with an MJ, what do you get? You get a crazy athlete who will probably score 180 points a game. And because of that, that's the scary part. So that is what I foresee over the next 100 years or so. The 21st century is here, and we are going through it right now. This is interesting stuff to me. This is my predictions over the next 80 years. Hopefully I get to live long enough to see at least some of this stuff, and hopefully we get to live forever with that CRISPR stuff. But either way, I hope that you've enjoyed today's video. I'll see you guys again next time.